Hi, I'm Pete and Henry, and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. Today, Henry and I are reassembling the water pump and fan assembly for the MD, and I've got all my new parts here. We've got all the old ones. Henry and I are going to do it together, which should be fun. So let's get to it. The first thing to do is to put the belt pulley back together, and after the disassembly video with some gentle reminders from viewers, I remembered that this did have to come apart because this adjusts the belt pulley tension on the fan belt. When I get this on here, the more you tighten it, the longer the belt becomes because it rides further out on the sheaves of the pulley. So I need to put this back together. I had a heck of a time getting this off. I had to heat it about 50 times to get it turned off with the torch. But I'm going to coat it good with Never Seez on the threads before I put it back on. The belt pulley's back together with a generous amount of Never Seez on the inside, and now we can go ahead and put on the new bearings and new seals. All the parts that I got for this I got through Bates, and they're not cheap. I think it ran around $170. Yes, you can buy a new water pump for these for $200 or $250, but you'll never get the same quality as I have here. And there's something to be said about the experience of going through it and understanding how it all works rather than just buying a rebuilt one and sticking it in. All right, next we got to put the new bearings in. And before we put them in, we got to pack them with grease. They go in both sides here. They're both the same bearing size. So you want the whole bearing to be full of grease. And obviously you've got to pack it in to get it in down around the balls because you want them all to be packed full. And you just kind of pack it in there. They do make a tool for this, of course, a bearing packing tool. I don't have one, and I don't particularly have a need for one because I find that packing bearings by hand is just another therapeutic part of restoring old tractors. It's just like frosting a cake, right?
Yeah.
Now we can put the bearings in this hub, and they should just tap in. And then to seat it, I've got a blunt chisel. And the other bearing goes in the other end. Now before we put the other bearing in, we have to put the bearing spacer in the middle that the impeller shaft runs through, and it holds the bearings spaced apart. And then Henry's going to put in the second one. Now we got to put the seal in this side of the hub. And these seals always face with the solid side outside what you're trying to contain. So I'm trying to contain grease. Here's the open side. And you can see the spring wire on the inside of the lip seal. It goes in like that. I coat these with gasket sealant just to make sure they make a good seal on the outside because I've had them leak before without. This is an odd seal. It's the first I've seen of this type. It's all plastic. Usually the outer ring and the top are made of metal, and then it's got the rubber lip seal inside of it. That one's all plastic. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It seemed to go in all right. Now we have another seal that goes on the other end of this grease chamber for the bearings, and it sits in this ring. And this ring goes on like this, and the fan bolts on here, but the seal's got to go inside the ring first before we put it on. So that's the grease side. The seal goes in like that. And this one's going to be a pain to drive in because it's going in opposite of the way you normally drive it. Normally you drive on this face of the seal. And this one we're coming on to the other way. So I don't want to bend this lip over. I'm going to have a bad seal. Coat it with some sealer first. This paint on the outside of these seals is supposed to be a sealing surface, but I don't find that works very well. Just take it slow. Try not to bend the flange. That's pretty darn good. Didn't bend it at all. So we got the seal fitted in this ring and had to drive it down in here. That's kind of a tricky seal to drive. And next, there's a gasket that goes on here before we set this and bolt it in place. So Henry, you can do the honors with the gasket sealer. Set the gasket on there. And then put this on.
Should the fan be on and the bolts go through the fan and all that?
The fan should be on here, and it will be, but I'm gonna leave it off until after we paint, and then I'll assemble it because it's easier to paint the fan when it's separate. So we're just kind of putting this on here temporarily for now. And we'll tighten it up so that the gasket seals up.
Can just go around all the way.
Yep. Now go to the next one. Yeah, so that the gasket seats evenly. There you go. Alrighty, next we can assemble the hub on the water pump body. This is where the impeller goes in here. And the first thing we need to put together is a new felt seal. Sometimes I soak felt seals in oil and sometimes I don't. This one I'm not going to. It just goes in there. It's more of a dust shield, so it really doesn't need to be soaked. And then this shaft goes in here. And we're going to have to persuade it a little bit. All right, Henry. So we got the felt seal in here, and then see this sleeve in the center between the two bearings needs to be lined up between the two bearings so that this will all go on. Here we go. Next thing that goes on is this sleeve, which actually seats against the top seal surface. And I'm going to get lubricated a little bit and then slide it on, which looks like we got plenty of grease here. So this sealing ring and bearing spacer goes right on here and slides down into the seal. And then this big nut that I had to heat up to take off goes back on. You'll see there's a bearing surface on the back side of this nut that matches the sleeve. So we want to put it on that way. I'm going to put a little penetrating oil on this to get it to turn a little bit easier. You know, we're going to have to take these studs back off to turn on this nut. There's one way to use these pliers, and that's so that when you're pulling, this jaw is doing the pulling and this one's pushing. It helps the pliers stay tight on the nut. But it only really matters when you're pulling hard on something. If you're just tightening something and it's loose, you can do it this way and it's fine. But I get people on YouTube will say, oh, you're using the pliers the wrong way. And you know, the fact is, if it's loose, it's fine going that way. If it's tight, it's better going this way. Yep, that's good. How does it turn? That is good. We'll put the impeller shaft in. This was a little tight going in. We'll put a little grease on her so she slides in a little bit easier. Yeah, I'm going to have to put it on the vise and drive it. There we go. Next thing to put in is the packing that goes around here. And I have 3 pieces, and hopefully that'll do the trick. It comes on and it has a slant cut on the ends of it so it fits in. So we just do that and slide it in. And I stagger the ends, so I've got the end facing me for this first one. Kind of jam that down in there. We'll get it all the way down until it sits on the seat. And one easy way to help that process along is to actually use the packing nut to bring it down. So it's going to go with the joint going that way.
So the end is facing away.
Yeah, it should face the windows.
This way or this way?
Yep. So you want to... Oh, no, wait a second. See, that end wants to be right there. And then you can just use the screwdriver to poke it down. Don't poke on it too hard, or we don't want to harm it. We just got to push it down in there a little bit more to get the packing nut started. Then we can work that packing down. Oops. Oh no, it's not started. There, it's started. See, the issue is that this needs to set on here. It needs to come down past this little flange. Well, Henry, I think this one beat us. I tried turning this nut on and it got cross-threaded. and I kept working away at the threads trying to get them straightened out, and so now I've got about half the threads I started with, and it just ain't working. So I'm going to order a new one of these bronze nuts, and I like to show for you guys the video start to finish, right? The reassembly. Well, I'm not going to be able to do that today because I got to get a new nut. But after I get that nut on and press the packing in with it, all that's really left to put on this is we've got the fan blade that goes on here, and then the drive, which drives the water pump shaft here. So we're really close to finished. And the last thing we got to do is put the thermostat together. Right?
Yeah.
We have a new thermostat here. And the thermostat just sits in the lip in this housing. And there's a little recess here that it fits right into. And that's all there is to it. So we just got to put on the gasket and seal it all together and put the bolts on. How about I paint the bottom and you paint the top? How does that sound?
You mean this?
Well, after I put the gasket on, you can paint the top.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We want to make sure that this one's good and coated because it's got to keep all the water in. You don't want it to leak.
If it does, you're gonna blame it on me.
Yeah, there, Henry. It was his fault. That's why the tractor doesn't work. Remember that day you helped me?
Thermostat's got to go on first.
Oh.
And then
Thermostat.
gasket. Okay. Don't forget the washers.
Thought they were putting this on all the way.
Well, remember when we put a gasket on, we sort of snug them down a little bit, and then we go back and tighten up the other one so the gasket tightens equally. Well, so there we have it. Mostly, Henry and I have got this together. Not quite all the way, but when my part comes, I'll finish it. This is the way it goes together when it's on the tractor, and we'll put the fan on after we paint it. You know, I guess this is kind of a life lesson. I tried on this nut, and in the end, I had to go to plan B. I'm not giving up. I'm just going to plan B. There's always another way to do something if you hit a roadblock. So thanks for helping me today, Henry. And we'll see you next time.